You literally can't make this headline up. Pirates Booty founder, the popcorn, stages a Long Island mutiny, declares he's mayor, and tries to fire all of the village staff. What's going on in Long Island? Let's get into it. Here we go.
Today, the village of about 5,000 people is heading to the polls after the founder of the snack company, Pirates Booty, declared himself mayor. He says, thanks to a little-known New York state law, he can legally form a new village and assume the role of mayor without an election.
Is this possible? Well, here's Eyewitness News reporter Janice Yu with more.
An unexpected and strange fight out in this 1 square mile village on Long Island as the fight for the mayor's seat in the village of Seacliff comes to a head.
And it will be very difficult for him to be operational and effective on day one.
I will be mayor tonight, and I'll be mayor tomorrow morning.
Robert Ehrlich is a longtime resident of Seacliff and the founder of Pirates Booty Snacks. And last Monday, he entered Village Hall, declared himself the mayor, and said the entire village staff was fired. Ehrlich said he created a new village called the Incorporated Village of Seacliff Residents, a right he says he has under the New York state law called the Citizens Empowerment Act.
I'm asking and imploring the governor to come down and give us help. We are abused and we are threatened and frightened each day by these public officials who do not recognize the residents at all.
Ehrlich is encouraging voters to write in his name on the ballot, which right now just has the current mayor, Elena Villafane, running uncontested. He also drew up his own ballot with options for mayor and a measure asking voters if they are in favor of incorporating Seacliff into the newly formed village, a move that prompted a visit from Nassau County Police Tuesday afternoon.
The mayoral election vote,
yeah,
and it has who we want to vote for.
And so, were you citing law? Are you citing law now?
No, I'm reading your paperwork.
Current Mayor Villafane says she's astounded by the events over the last week. She says he could have officially filed as a candidate, but he failed to do that.
I'm with Rob because I'm with Rob, clearly. Why wouldn't I be with Rob? Rob is not dealing with the full deck of cards. Yeah.
If he wants to be the mayor, at this point in the process is the only way that he can be on a ballot is to have residents write in his name.
He's a write-in.
At the end of the day, she says it's all up to the 5,000 or so people who call this village home to make their voices heard.
All that we can do is it's open to our residents. Vote. If people really want a new voice and they feel that he's their guy, then go vote. Yeah, it's a free and open election.
In Seacliff, Janice Yu, Channel 7, Eyewitness.
This is just literally one of those stories where you're like, you're saying what? You're doing what? Based on what? This makes no sense whatsoever. This guy must have just lost his screws, or he's going down one of those ideological things. Well, they did this, so therefore we're doing this. And neither one of them makes any sense. Because what he's talking about, nobody's saying, oh, yeah, I'm on board with you there, Bob. I'm on board with you there. I think you got something going. That and that. Pirates Booty Snack is pretty good. My ex-wife used to love Pirates Booty Snack. Got a little bit of seasoning on it. It's like a little bit of salty popcorn, right? It's nothing crazy great in my opinion, but people love their Pirates Booty. An unexpected and peculiar fight is playing out in this 1 square mile village on Long Island as the fight for the mayor's seat in the village of Seacliff comes to a head. Robert Ehrlich, longtime resident of Seacliff and the founder of Pirates Booty Snack. How can a guy who came up with Pirates Booty Snack go down this rabbit hole of last Monday he entered Village Hall, declared himself mayor, and said the entire village staff, you're all fired, but you're all eligible for immediate rehire after you recognize my, position of authority here. Ehrlich, Bob, said that he created a new village called the Incorporated Village of Seacliff Residents. Well, then isn't he the inherent natural king? Is this guy not the king? He's the king of whatever, Incorporated Village of Seacliff Residents. A right that he says he has under a New York state law called the Citizens Empowerment Act. Now, a bunch of you are going to say in the comments, Sean, that's true. He can do that. How's that working out for him? He got protocol that you got to follow to actually make one of these Citizens Empowerment Act things happen, right? We know that what we're doing, and we're terrified of this act, and I'm asking and imploring the governor to come down and give us help. Bob, why? Why should the governor come down and help you? You're literally talking nonsense. You're talking, we are abused and we are threatened. You don't look like you're abused. You don't look like you're threatened. You just want to get your way, and frightened each day by these public officials who do not recognize these residents at all, Ehrlich said. That's a different story. Threatened and frightened each day by these public officials. All right, so your public official isn't listening to you. Then you do a recall, and then you get somebody new in there, and maybe you try and get somebody new in there who isn't exactly like the other guy or girl, whatever. Maybe you do that, or you just go down the insanity route and you just keep voting blue. This has got to work. At some point in time, our misguided ideology has got to work. Handing out drugs to people, it's got to work. Reducing all crime from felonies and whatever down to misdemeanors, it's got to work. It's got to work. This has got to work. This has got to have a positive impact on us. And it just doesn't. Things just keep getting worse and worse. And eventually you have to turn it around. If we just had one more candidate to go down this route, if we just had one more individual, we could turn the corner. And you're left with, you guys are just dumb. You're just dumb. Ehrlich is encouraging voters to write in his name on the ballot because he's not even really on the ballot, which right now has the current mayor, Elena Villafane, running uncontested. Imagine this guy coming into your village courthouse, whatever, your civic place of whatever, and he just goes, yeah, you're all fired. You'd be left with like, what? And then it becomes a major news story. Hey, look at Seacliff. You got a bunch of geniuses going on there. He also drafted his own ballot with options for mayor and a measure asking voters whether they're supporting incorporating Seacliff into the newly formed village, the village that he incorporated, and he's the new mayor, allegedly, right? The move prompted a visit from the county police Tuesday afternoon. Mayor Villafane said she's astounded by the events over the last week. She says Ehrlich could have officially filed as a candidate, but he failed to do that. He's not even on the ballot. Not even on the ballot. They're going to allow him to run as a write-in, right? Hey, write your name in there. I mean, literally, I've covered the supervisor, the super mayor, Tiffany Henyard, Village of Dalton, Township of Thornton, covered that to death. And she basically was not able to get on the Township of Thornton ballot. And she got absolutely crushed in the primary. She got, 8% of the votes? Something like that? Or was it 12% of the votes? I can't remember. It was such a small number that it didn't really matter. It was like, yeah, you didn't there was a landslide, but it wasn't the landslide you were thinking, like you predicted you were going to have, like Trump did. Tiffany Henyard repeatedly said, I wouldn't like Trump. No, you got crushed. You got crushed even worse than Kamala Harris and Tampon Tim. You got crushed even worse than that, which is saying something. Right? It's really saying something. And then she said, I guess God has a different plan for me. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And I think that was at the outset when, you just couldn't get any of your stuff together. If he wants to be the mayor at this point in the process, the only way is to be in the ballot is a resident's write in his name. All right. Okay. So Popcorn Bob, he goes on to say, Ehrlich said that he is glad his candidacy shook up the village and plans on starting a podcast and expanding his snack business. Going to do a podcast. Everybody's doing a podcast. Go ahead, get into podcasting. It's the greatest thing ever until you got to put out said podcast on the regular, and it's a lot of work. You got to put in the time, but everybody's starting a podcast because after Trump decided, you know what? Round 2 of these debates with Kamala Harris, it's not doing me any good because she sucker punched me in on all of her triggering nonsense. Her ridiculous arguments, they were working. Trump was getting, he was not having a great first election, or not the first debate. He did not do well there. He didn't do well there. And he recognized that because everything she says just upsets him, and rightfully so. But he took the bait on a lot of that stuff, and he didn't have to. But he couldn't help himself, so he realized, all right, we're not doing debate number 2. Instead, he went on the podcast circuit. And he crushed along with J.D. Vance. They crushed. If you look at the numbers of, just look at Joe Rogan podcast alone, something like, 75 million views out of the gate between the two of them. 16 million after a short period for J.D. Vance on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's the vice president. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris went on Call Her Daddy and Club Shay Shay and barely got 1 million on one and got like a couple million on the other. It's probably more than that now. But the power of the podcast forum, if done correctly, clearly nobody wanted to hear Kamala Harris speak for 3 hours on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's where I think the inherent piece of the puzzle goes missing. Nobody wants to hear Kamala Harris's word salad for 3 hours. Could you imagine? That is just straight torture. Now, you might say the same thing about Trump if you're a Trump hater, if you have Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, I get that. I understand that. You don't like Orange Man bad. He's bad. Everything he says is bad. But some of us did vote for him, over half the country. And how'd that election, work out for Trump derangement syndrome folks? How'd that last election go? How'd that go? So the whole podcast thing is because everybody wants a piece of the pie, and you are seeing numbers on podcasts far surpass what you're seeing in mainstream media, what you're seeing on MSNBC, what you're seeing on CNN. The numbers don't lie. All of those viewers have gone elsewhere, and they've gone to places like podcasts. They used to be just kind of one of these, fringe things, but not anymore because you've got so much pull. Look at Charlie Kirk with Turning Point. I mean, that guy really turned that drill around. When I first started watching Charlie Kirk, I was like, who is this guy and what is he talking about? And then I just kept watching his approach. He's got his methodology. He's got his psychology. He's got his arguments, and he is dialed in. And if you come from that background, I really like Charlie Kirk. I think he's great. I think what he does is amazing. And he's never super mean. He's never super condescending. To some of the libtards, yeah, he cuts them off a little bit, but they deserve to be cut off because they are literally mentally unwell individuals. And he knows that. And he can take advantage of those folks and just basically wind them up and just get them going, and then boop. They're gone. It's like watching Ben Shapiro argue against some middle-level Democrat on anything. He just absolutely trounces people because he's got his arguments down, right? He's got his arguments down. This guy here, Popcorn Bob, he doesn't have his arguments down. He doesn't really have anything down except for the shock appeal. But now he's going to start a podcast, going to be talking about some popcorn, going to be talking politics, because nobody's listening, apparently, and expanding his snack business. Maybe I should stay to the snack business. Maybe I should stay with Pirates Booty, not get involved with imaginary politics, because that's what it kind of seemed like to me, some imaginary politics. But you know what? With the world that we're in, a lot of this stuff is just not shocking, is it? No, you're like, what? The story is what? Why are we even talking about this? Good question. But thanks for sticking this far with me on the podcast. I'll catch up with you and the guys on the next one. We'll see you then. Thanks again for being here. Bye for now.